Hi, this is Andrew Groh with the Missouri Society of CPAs. This is MOCPA Bar Talk, where we talk about the latest trends, news, and issues that matter to you the most. Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of MOCPA Bar Talk. My name is Andrew Groh, and today we have Kristin Curcuru, Senior Account Manager with Becker Professional Education. Kristin, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely.
We've known each other for a number of years, and today we're here to talk a little bit about the CPA exam review, kind of the climate, where things are, CPA exam candidates, what's new, what's going on with the CPA exam itself. So maybe you can share a little bit about who you are, what's your professional background.
Sure.
Welcome. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm a Senior Account Manager with Becker Professional Education. Becker is a leading provider of preparatory materials for the CPA exam, as well as continuing education for those currently with a license. And so my role as a Senior Account Manager primarily is to work closely with our partners at the university level, firms, societies, of course, maybe most importantly, and just really educating candidates, whether upcoming candidates, current candidates, and what to expect on the CPA exam, and what are some tips and tricks on helping boost that success factor on the CPA exam, as well as educating them on what the exam looks like. And so I've been here for 6 years today.
Okay.
Happy
anniversary, right?
Thank you. This morning was my 6-year anniversary, so exciting stuff. So they always say time flies when you're having fun, and that's definitely been the case with this role. So prior to that, I worked in for-profit education, or I worked for a university in admissions, and really helping students, helping them find their career path. And I worked closely with the Becker representative at that time and helping students focus on an accounting profession. And so that was an easy lead into this role at Becker.
That's fantastic. And I know, you're in our schools, accounting schools and universities quite often, different times throughout the course of the year. What are some of the big universities that you connect up with for students and for the CPA exam passers? And then what's kind of your territory? Where do you go?
Yeah, absolutely. So I cover about half of Missouri. So kind of along the central area and east of that. And then I also cover about half of Illinois as well.
Okay.
So
I remember at one time you were in Indiana, maybe down in Kentucky. I know that changes over time, but it's great that you and other team members from Becker have dedicated regions, and then you can be kind of really holding hands for candidates and be the bridge and the link between the candidate, university education, and the firms, businesses they go to.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. So why are we here today? What's new in the world of CPA exam prep? And I think mostly, if I'm already a CPA, Andrew Groh CPA. Why should I be paying attention to what's going on in the CPA exam world right now?
Well, there's a lot of proposed changes. So there's been a kind of a disruption essentially in the accounting industry, and so there's a lot of changes coming. And now's the time that we need to be prepared for those. So it kind of goes back to, I think it was about 4 years ago. I remember sitting at a banquet, and we had a speaker come in, and they were talking about artificial intelligence. And I remember 4 years ago thinking, okay, yeah, this is happening. Of course, this is going to be happening. And I think everybody had that. A lot of people had that same outlook, and I don't think they realized how quickly it was going to really come into the profession and have an impact. And so now the AICPA and NASBA and other supporting organizations are really having to take the time and figuring out, we've got to make some changes. We've got to get these new upcoming candidates prepared for these changes in their profession. And so there's been a lot of discussion. There's been a lot of research done So there's been a practice analysis that's taken place, and that happened, I believe, this summer. And so that's been kind of that they've included several employers at the firm level, corporate, and just trying to identify what are CPAs doing in year 1 and 2 of their roles, and what do we need to take from that in order to prepare the upcoming graduates and upcoming candidates for that
talent pipeline. And let's say you're the manager of a mid-sized CPA firm, and you passed the CPA exam many moons ago. You're looking at these upcoming changes and saying, gee, the CPA exam is changing, our profession is changing. What do I need to be thinking about, talking with my younger professionals about as they're rolling into being a CPA exam candidate, or what I'm looking for in talent coming out of universities? If I'm a hiring manager or a partner, why are we looking at these technologies now?
Well, so the students that are coming into these roles, or the people that are coming into these roles, are going to not only need to be aware of these technologies, but they're going to have to know how to utilize them. So, in order for them to be a successful employee, in order for them to truly help the organizations that they're going to work for, in order to help them meet their goals, they're going to have to know how to do those things. And so, students now need to be looking at, what kind of skill sets do I need to have? Do I need to double major? Do I need to pick up a minor that's going to give me these additional skill sets? And I think that's something that the universities are going to have to look at too, and really figure out how they can support the students in being more hireable for those roles.
We're hearing a lot of that too, and coming from the firms, from universities, working in concert with you and other course providers. One thing that we've been hearing over and over again is the students coming up with these new skill sets are going to be the ones oftentimes actually driving and implementing the change itself, which is maybe historically not the way that systems and new technology have been implemented in our profession. But the idea that senior professionals, business owners are going to need to lean more and more heavily on the skills and the knowledge of younger professionals being taught at universities. It's a major deal. And I also understand that this is not just us talking about this. This is not kind of a long runway to have a major impact on the exam itself. So let's talk a little bit about not just the changes that are going on, but how's the CPA exam actually adapting to being able to capture some of these technologies and changes?
Yeah, so currently as it stands with the CPA exam, it's really focusing on 4 areas. So you've got your financial, audit, regulation, and business. So while those are all important, there's obviously a need for some change there. And so now where they're kind of, with the new proposed model, I guess you would say, is really focusing on 3 key areas, and that's tax, audit, and business, or technology, I'm sorry. So technology is starting to be truly incorporated into the CPA exam. Now with those 3 areas, they're also launching potentially launching discipline areas, okay? And so the discipline areas basically give the candidates kind of an opportunity to figure out where they're wanting to go with their career. And so some of those include business reporting and analysis, information systems and controls, and tax compliance and planning. And so really allowing for it to be more specific. So, there's been a lot of discussions on, not everybody's going to go into the same areas within the accounting industry, right? So not everybody's going to go into tax, not everybody's going to go into audit, so truly giving them, the opportunity to find what's best for them.
And explore, and the profession is very much already moved into much more advisory service kind of areas and arenas, and the proposed changes that you mentioned, this is not one group who just kind of threw darts at a dartboard and
No.
said, "How is this going to look?"
Yeah.
What were some of the things that you guys were involved in? And state societies, AICPA, NASBA. How did this all come about in the last couple of years?
Yeah, so they really took some time to identify, again, I mentioned they really took the time to find out what CPAs are doing year 1 and 2. And that's where a lot of that, comes into play. But they took the time and they kind of did a whole analysis to see how can we, adapt to these changes and truly prep upcoming candidates. So
What they find? What are CPAs going to be doing in years 1 and 2 for future? What do you think?
yeah, so a lot of it is technology, focused on technology. So there's a big focus on artificial intelligence. I know you did a previous podcast on some of the upcoming technologies or ones that are taking place right now. Robotic process automation, blockchain technologies. So there's a lot of different things that they are going to be required to do.
Yeah, it's super exciting. Here at the society, we're taking the approach of kind of get engaged with the changes that are coming up in the technologies, and then those will be kind of jumping off points for the future of audit and tax and advisory services, those types of things. It's an exciting time.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a student, if you're talking with a CPA exam candidate, do they feel like that it's an exciting time, or is it a little maybe challenging, or are we navigating here right now? Where are your conversations with CPA exam candidates right now?
Yeah, so anytime there's an anticipated change, there's a lot of anxiety around it typically, right? So, when I'm out there talking to students, anytime I mention, there are some anticipated changes with the CPA exam. There's a lot of, oh man, why now?
I just thought I had this all figured out.
Right. Why me? Why now? And so, I think there's probably a little bit of a mixture of both. Now, I think it also depends on, what their background is in. So some of these students have already been ahead of the game. So there are some students that have already taken the courses that they've needed to take. They've really immersed themselves into the emerging technology. So maybe they have an IT minor or something along those lines, to where they've been exposed to some of that. So I think on that end, they might be a little more prepared. So that doesn't mean that those that haven't, are not going to have a good result.
Sure.
But it also means that it's time to start really thinking about this, and it's time to start preparing and be ready for the changes.
And I know you're having these conversations. There's a lot of content material out here. We're talking about it here on this podcast. The more that our profession can, I think, get out in front and share some of these conversations and futures, hopefully the better, CPA exam candidates will be able to help navigate them towards success. And so as a profession, there are a lot of different advocates and players involved here. We're all kind of trying to move towards the same direction, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So going back to those technologies again, and specifically for the CPA exam, you guys are really dialed in with the what is known now as the CPA Blueprint. Can you talk a little bit about what is the CPA Blueprint, and how does this conversation kind of really impact the changes to the CPA exam blueprint in the future?
Yeah. So the blueprint is basically the AICPA's kind of outline of what they're going to be testing on for the CPA exam. So I always refer students to this, so those that are getting to that point of, hey, I'm getting close to sitting for the exam, and have that anxiety of, what am I even going to be tested on, right? And some are like that, some are not as much, I've got this, I can handle it. But I think that the blueprints are great for those that, I think they're great for anybody, but really identifying what are the concepts, what are the key areas that I need to really spend my time on to prepare for the CPA exam. But not only the CPA exam, their career in accounting, and that's with the CPA exam, and that's why they're making these changes, and that's why they continue to make changes on the CPA exam. They want it to line up to what professionals are going to be doing day to day as an accountant.
Right, so. And for a little bit of light reading, take a look at the blueprint. blueprints, right? I mean,
Right.
it's not for the faint of heart. So.
No, there's a lot of information in there. You're absolutely right. So as I mentioned, for those that need to look through that, I think it's an absolutely great resource. But the blueprints are what Becker is using to prepare our materials and identify key areas that the students need to focus on. It's what a lot of universities utilize to prepare their curriculum on an annual basis. So, it's really kind of our tool, our resource in order to, prepare students the best that we can.
To make sure that they're going to have fantastic success on the exam. And I know we all appreciate that from an advocacy perspective. Super important, if you're getting after the CPA exam to get your hands on an exam review course. Becker's a great resource there. Kristin, you are also here, I know, in the St. Louis metro area in your region. We did talk earlier a little bit about kind of the 4 technologies that society identified for now in the future. Data analytics, blockchain, RPA, and AI. Are any of those showing up on the exam right now? And if so, which ones?
So data analytics has already taken place in the exam. And so that started, I believe it was July. So this summer, they already started to incorporate that into the questions on the exam. So not necessarily a content change, but they've already started to, present that to candidates taking the exam. So that's already absolutely.
And are you seeing any metrics coming out of of candidates taking different sections of the exam, and maybe are they prepared for these types of questions? I know Becker does a great job of cutting and looking at different data, from your clients. Mm-hmm. What are you seeing on, are students prepared for this type of stuff, or do we need some more work?
I think there's a lot of work. I think there's a lot of work that we need to make happen. And so while yes, we can, Becker does a great job of providing the tools that they need, it needs to start earlier. So several of these students, they just were exposed to it right before.
Right.
So it's not enough time. So they need more time. It needs to be presented earlier on in their programs so they are ready for it when it comes to the CPA exam.
Right, and at least like you shared earlier, the awareness piece of it is super critical so that students and professors and you all and others can get ready for what's going to be tested for on the exam. Are you hearing anything about these other technologies? I know it's not now, but maybe in the next year or two beginning to be integrated on the exam. And if so, which one?
Yeah, so there's been discussion, especially with data analytics, since that's already taking place. So that's really probably going to be one of the earlier ones to roll out. There's discussion about all of them actually being incorporated into the exam by 2022.
That's what we're hearing too.
So really, now's the time to start, exposing students to these technologies and getting them prepared.
So are these the same types of conversations that you and Becker are having with university programs, accounting school programs? As we know, it can be challenging to change curricula.
Sure.
And the speed of change here is pretty fast.
Mm-hmm.
And what can we do as kind of an accounting ecosystem to help not just share these upcoming technology trends and needs, but help university professors and programs prepare students to get them knocked out?
Yeah. So there's already some initiatives in place for that the AICPA has kind of implemented, and that is basically to where active CPAs are serving on boards of the universities to really provide them up-to-date information on what's coming into the profession. And so that's really going to help. But I think the more that we are discussing this during our meetings and any interaction we have with faculty and students,
it's positive.
Yeah.
And those accounting school advisory boards are very powerful. If you're talking with a accounting department at a school university that does not leverage their alumni like that, what would you say to the staff there?
Yeah, I mean it's needed. You're doing your students a disservice by not, exposing them to and preparing them. You want most of the universities, their goal is to help their students be successful, right? And that's our goal. That's your goal. We have an equal goal in that, and just making sure that we increase the number of CPA exam testers and they pass.
That's great. And that's a great segue, because you and I have chatted about this quite a bit. Increasing the amount of CPA exam candidates. Let's move to a second and talk a little bit about profession pipeline, and then maybe some futures. Every 2 years, the AICPA publishes a trends in supply and demand of the accounting profession. You guys are well aware of that. Take a deep look at that. We do too. A lot of other groups do also. The last publication was last fall, 2019. And what were some of the key takeaways from that you guys saw and took a look and either said, that's great, this is fantastic, there are some challenges here and opportunities, or we need to make some major adjustments? What were some of the conversations that you all had at Becker coming out of that trends report?
Yeah, so one of the most alarming things is, so while the Bachelor's of Science in Accounting was one of the second largest major business programs, the master's level has decreased. So then the enrollments in students enrolling in the master's programs has decreased quite a bit. PhD, a lot. And master's is primarily more, focused on Becker, because a lot of them are looking to sit for the CPA exam at that point. That's kind of their goal. And so we had a lot of discussions, and just we've heard a lot of students that are getting done with the bachelor's or getting done with the undergraduate and looking to work for a while, which, as you know as well as I do, that's hard to hear, because that the likelihood of them coming back, finishing a master's degree, then taking the CPA exam, all while working full-time is going to be challenging. Not impossible, but certainly more challenging. So that is something that we've had to really take a look at. And I know, when it comes to the requirements to be able to sit for the CPA exam, and just making sure that we're intriguing them early on as possible, so.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. And we talk a lot about kind of some hard factors and some soft factors, both nationally and also right here in Missouri. We have a lot of data-centric conversations about professional pipeline issues and wins and challenges. A couple things, as we know, in a great economy like we have right now, the accounting profession tends to see a decrease in accounting school students, because the profession is very stable and has been for ever 100 plus years. What happens when the economy eventually, we're assuming, will turn the other direction? Would you expect to see that the accounting school numbers and master's degree numbers begin to tick back up again?
I think so. I mean, and they kind of referenced the Great Recession of 2008, and there was a big increase in the accounting student enrollments, and so I think a similar thing will happen as well.
Yeah, we think so too. A couple of the things, one thing that came out of meetings with the AICPA, and I know that Becker was involved in those, we've heard that starting salaries for accountants and then CPAs moving forward have remained fairly static over the last maybe 30 years or so, and I may get the number wrong, but for quite a while. What are you all hearing from your candidates, from even potential candidates, and also on the other side, firms, about kind of starting salary and competitive pay there?
Yeah, so that's obviously a concern. So we've seen a big shift into majors like finance in particular, just because of the salary. There's that concern of focusing on that much education, right? So spending that much time in school, that extra year, maybe 2 years, spending that extra money, as well as then studying and paying for a CPA license, right? So That's obviously a concern. Now, what I will say about the accounting profession, maybe there needs to be some changes when it comes to starting salaries, but also if you look long term, it's different. It changes, so while there might be a higher starting salary for someone in finance, when you look at long term and the earnings for a CPA, it's quite a bit.
Yeah. So we've been in this profession for many years. We've heard the CPA being called the $1 million credential. Mm-hmm. Over the course of your career, CPAs are likely to earn on average $1 million more than if you're not a CPA in the same profession. Are we still using kind of that conversation, especially with students on the front end? I'd like to hear from you, and we're talking a little bit differently now, but how are you guys kind of talking with students about that long-term potential?
Yeah, and that's a tough one, just because we haven't used that. It's kind of really an outdated statistic, and so we've kind of tried to spend some time fishing on something new that we can kind of present to these students.
So what are you guys looking at?
To be determined.
Okay.
I wish I had an answer for you. And it is something that, I had asked about not too long ago, actually, but I know it's something that our team is really working on and trying to identify what is it, what's going to really stand out, what are those statistics that we need to really push for. So to build excitement on the CPA profession.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about this before. And I don't know if it's something that's carried over through to other profession partners and through other areas of the kind of the accounting ecosystem. But we like to say your CPA is your career passport. So think about a geographic passport. We're here in St. Louis, Missouri, or somewhere else in the States. We want to go overseas. You get a passport, and that allows you so much access to travel and opportunity. We believe that the CPA is equivalent to a career passport.
Yeah.
And that seems to resonate pretty well, especially with younger professionals and students. I wish we had some hard data to share that these were the actual students that said, yes, this is the reason why. We don't, but we like the way that it's going. So.
Yeah. And I would say we kind of have taken a similar approach. I think that's something that I really talk about a lot in my presentations, and when I'm talking to especially some of those undergraduate students, those that haven't quite reached that point of whether they're going to sit for the CPA exam or not. And so really just letting them know what the opportunity is. And just like you said, it's not just public accounting, it's not just tax or audit. There's a lot of other areas to go with that. And essentially you can find your passion and what you like to do. There's an accountant for, I always say every one of those big companies that you are dying to work for needs an accountant.
Accountant, yeah.
Yep.
And these are things that, for CPAs listening to this podcast, some things to think about, I think, as maybe you're mentoring or talking with, maybe a niece, nephew, cousin, whatever, somebody who's interested in our profession, some things to think about to be able to share. So that's fantastic. And so let me ask, are there some other things that you and Becker are working on right now and looking ahead to the future, whether it's pipeline-related initiatives, major changes to CPA exam review course preparation, things that you're thinking about or talking about? What are some things that you guys are working on that we haven't even talked about yet?
Yeah. So, of course, as an account manager, our role really is to build awareness of the not only Becker's review materials, but also the CPA license. And so we've really probably put a little bit more emphasis even than we have in the past of just partnering with different organizations.
We appreciate that, yes.
And prepared to do more, so just building awareness. And so I've personally done a few things with the ACAP program and building awareness on the accounting credential or CPA credential. And so there's been a lot of things that we've done on that end to try to help build that out. So
that's fantastic. What are some other things that you guys are working on?
Yeah, so when it comes to the technology side of things, we have really started to incorporate more of that into even just our review materials on the CPA exam. And so just giving exposure to the students. So one of the areas is artificial intelligence. So we started incorporating that into our course this summer. And so basically utilizing, as the students are prepping through the materials, as they're answering the questions, creating personalized review sessions based on the information they're providing. So it's really pretty cool to see that take place. But we've also started to focus on that on the continuing education side of things too. So offering certificates in artificial intelligence and focusing on courses in blockchain technologies, data analytics, and all of those types of areas.
That's fantastic, and certainly something that we hadn't chatted about yet, but a need there with all these technologies kind of hitting our profession and in short succession. Perhaps the idea that CPAs who may be listening to this podcast right now should consider retooling a little bit, depending on where they are on their career path. Certificates, other kind of online programs, in-person programs, and initiatives, all fantastic things to think about, even if you're mid-career.
Absolutely. This is definitely, while we're primarily talking about those that are upcoming, this is affecting everyone. This is going to affect everyone. And it's an exciting thing, when you really listen to how it's going to impact the industry. It's really pretty cool. So, but it is going to impact everyone. So whether you're just thinking about sitting for the CPA exam at that point, or as you mentioned, mid-career, it's time to start preparing.
Well, that's
yourself.
fantastic. Maybe another one or two quick questions.
Sure.
What is your annual kind of work cycle look like?
Sure.
What are you heading into now?
Yeah, so right now, putting a lot of emphasis on the universities, and so getting out to all of my university partners and talking with the students. So I do anything from classroom presentations to working with the school organizations like Beta Alpha Psi, Accounting Society, things like that, and just really getting them prepared. Now is also the time where there's a big influx in the number of test takers. So spring is when we have a high candidate number, and so I will be working with a lot of those students, both in groups, individual basis, and helping them get prepared, knowing what they need to do, how to get started. It's a little bit of an overwhelming process, that beginning part of how do I start the process, when do I apply,
Right.
How do I apply. So I have a lot of conversations with students at this point, calming them down and helping them through that process. So and then I also work with a lot of the firm partners, as I mentioned too, and talking with their interns and uncertified staff, new hires, and kind of providing the same type of conversations.
That's great, and for years and years you've been doing a great job here. I know we try to share as much as we can that as a jurisdiction, Missouri's regularly one of the top performing jurisdictions for first-time exam passers, and I think highest average exam scores.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever it is that you're doing, we're all doing here is working very well for our CPA exam candidates here in Missouri. And that said, I did want to ask you about some upcoming legislative changes.
Mm-hmm.
As you may know, the Society and a couple of the groups are introducing some legislation this spring, right now, to at least consider changing some of the regulatory requirements to sit for the exam in Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
Big picture, what are you seeing? Maybe a difference between sitting at 150 and 120, specific educational requirements, even maybe do we need to start requiring things like data analytics courses to even be able to be eligible to sit for the exam? Big picture, what are you and Becker seeing in terms of those types of things?
Yeah, so one of the things we're seeing is students are wanting to test earlier and earlier, wanting to take the exam closer to some of those core courses in their program. But that also increases the chance of hireability too. And so they hear that, and they hear that from employers that, even just starting the process makes them, much more marketable. So on that end of things, it really does help them, and they're used to studying and they're in that.
So sitting for the exam closer to the end of undergraduate degree. Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a happy medium there, whatever that may be, but waiting till the 150 has also, there's been some challenges along with that too. We've seen a lot of students taking the exam in other states, so they can get the exam done. And truthfully, a lot of them, aren't necessarily taking it right after the bachelor's, maybe a little bit closer to when they're going to have the master's. So there is that concern too of, are they going to have the skill sets they need? Are they going to try to, get the exam done and maybe not put the focus on the skill sets that they need in order to be successful in their career thereafter. However, they're putting themselves at a disservice for that. So that is something that, you almost have to put that on them as, they need to be preparing themselves. They need to, figure out how they need to get those extra skill sets in technology, data analytics, as you mentioned, things like that. So.
And that's great. It's consistent with what we're hearing, and it's also why it's not an easy kind of, of course that, a candidate should be able to sit at 120 or 150 or whatever it is in between. There are a lot of factors that go into candidate success.
Yeah.
So, with that, did you want to add anything else to the conversation today?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for joining the show. You're welcome back anytime. And Kristin Curcuru, you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Thank you for joining us for this edition of MOCPA Bar Talk. If you have any questions or would like to chat a little bit more about the issues that we discussed, just let me know. My contact information is below.